All right, so get ready because we're going deep into Chinese coffee today.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating stuff.
I think a lot of people might think of China as a tea country,
Right.
but that's changing pretty rapidly.
Oh, yeah, way faster than people might imagine.
So where are we getting all this information from?
Well, we're looking at the Coffee World Markets and Trade Report.
Okay.
That was from December 2024 by the USDA.
So like the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
Okay, and so what's in this report that's like so surprising?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that really surprised me.
Okay.
China's coffee consumption is way up,
Like how far up?
almost 150%
Wow.
in the last decade.
That's huge.
I know, right?
So like what does that look like on the ground?
Basically, it's like everyone in China suddenly decided they needed another cup of coffee every day.
Or two.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, that's a serious caffeine surge.
It is. It really is.
So this begs the question, what is causing this?
I mean, it's not just a passing trend or anything.
Mm.
This is a big shift that's happening.
So what is actually going on?
Well, part of it is that China's younger generation,
Especially in the big cities.
yeah, especially places like Beijing and Shanghai,
Okay.
they're really getting into coffee.
But China has such a strong tea culture.
Yeah, for sure.
So how is coffee finding space in that?
It's a really interesting shift, you know,
Yeah.
because if you think back just a decade or so.
Like in those same cities, Beijing, Shanghai,
Exactly.
you would see tea houses everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
But now what you're seeing is trendy coffee shops are kind of popping up all over the place.
Yeah, becoming the new social hubs.
Oh, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
it's like the coffee shop in the US
Right.
or in Europe.
Yeah.
It's become like a cultural thing.
Yeah, totally. And it's the same kind of thing happening in China, especially for young people.
Okay, and how did this all start?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with international brands.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, when China started liberalizing its trade back in the early 2000s,
Okay.
big international coffee chains, they were really the ones who introduced coffee to the masses.
Oh, so it's like people were curious about this new drink.
Yeah, and the familiar brands made it kind of less intimidating to try something new,
Okay.
but it didn't stay that way for long.
Really?
No, because domestic coffee chains, they saw an opportunity and they jumped on it.
Okay, so what were these Chinese brands doing differently?
Well, one of the biggest things was that they really embraced technology.
Okay.
Think like online ordering, delivery apps,
Yeah.
all kinds of mobile payment systems.
Okay.
Basically, they made it super convenient.
So you could get your caffeine fix anytime, anywhere.
Exactly.
Oh.
And on top of that, they weren't just copying what the international chains were doing.
Oh, interesting.
They started experimenting with new flavors, new brewing methods, even incorporating local ingredients.
Really? So they were trying to create something that would appeal specifically to Chinese taste.
Absolutely.
And did it work?
Oh, yeah, big time. Yeah, because they understood that, Chinese consumers, they're not necessarily looking for the same kind of, bold, strong flavors
Right.
that are more popular in the West.
So what were people looking for?
Well, they wanted something smoother,
Okay.
maybe a little bit sweeter,
Okay.
something that really complemented their existing culinary traditions.
So Chinese coffee culture was already starting to develop its own unique personality.
Yeah, definitely.
And it sounds like consumer tastes were getting more refined.
Totally.
Like they were moving away from that instant coffee
yeah.
that kind of dominated the market in the beginning.
Right, like people's palates were becoming more sophisticated.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they were starting to appreciate the nuances of different coffee beans
Yeah.
and different brewing methods.
And so that leads us to the massive increase in coffee consumption that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Is that mostly driven by this demand for higher quality beans?
A big part of it, yeah.
Okay, so like beyond the instant stuff now, people are looking for something special.
Yeah, they're starting to care about where their coffee comes from, how it's roasted, the whole experience.
So it's kind of like the craft beer movement,
Totally.
but with coffee.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got this new generation embracing coffee. We've got domestic chains shaking things up. And we've got this growing appreciation for quality beans.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
Well, all this is leading to some really fascinating stuff happening, both within China and globally.
And I think it's important to remember here that China is still relatively new to the coffee scene.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm really curious to know what's brewing.
Well, let me tell you about Yunnan province.
Oh, okay.
That's where we'll start.
Okay, so you mentioned Yunnan province.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I always picture China as a tea country. So where are they actually growing coffee?
Well, Yunnan province, it's like in the southwestern corner of China.
Okay.
And it's really like the heartland of Chinese coffee.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's got these misty mountains, lush valleys, perfect for growing Arabica beans.
So it's kind of
Yeah.
like a mystical coffee land?
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
Oh, wow.
And, they've actually been growing coffee there for over a century.
Really?
But it's only recently started to gain, global recognition.
So what kind of coffee are they growing there?
The main variety is called Catamore.
Catamore. Okay, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a really robust plant.
Okay.
It's disease resistant.
Okay.
Can handle Yunnan's, varied climate.
So it's like it can take anything you throw at it.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Okay.
But Catamore beans,
Yeah.
they don't always have that, really complex flavor
Oh, okay.
that a lot of coffee connoisseurs look for.
So what are those connoisseurs looking for then?
Well, there's other varieties, like bourbon.
Oh,
And typically, they're known for their, delicate,
Okay.
more nuanced flavors.
So it's kind of like a trade-off.
Yeah.
You get this reliable bean with Catamore,
Yeah, the workhorse.
but maybe not the most exciting flavor.
Yeah.
But then you've got these more delicate,
Yeah.
more nuanced beans
Sort
with
of-
Burden
yes.
and Typica.
Yeah, those are harder to grow.
Yeah.
But the
Oh.
flavor's worth it.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of farmers in Yunnan are actually starting to experiment with those varieties,
Oh, cool.
trying to, strike a balance
Yeah.
between yield and quality.
So they're kind of trying to level up their coffee game.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting because it's almost like they're realizing, to compete in
Yeah.
this booming market,
Right.
they need to offer something that's on par
Yeah.
with imports in terms of quality and taste.
Absolutely.
So speaking of imports,
Right.
we mentioned this earlier, this incredible statistic,
Yeah.
China's coffee imports
Yeah.
have almost tripled in the last decade,
Yeah.
reaching a projected 5.6 million bags
Yeah.
in 2024-25.
Yeah, it's a crazy number.
That's wild.
It is.
And so I think what's even more interesting
Right.
is that shift
Yeah.
in the types of coffee that they're
Yeah.
importing.
Totally.
Because, it started with the soluble coffee,
Yeah.
which is instant coffee.
Yeah, that's the quick fix.
Right.
Yeah.
But then something changed.
Right.
What happened?
Well, people's tastes
Right.
evolved.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so the demand for green coffee beans
Okay.
skyrocketed.
So instead of importing
Right.
ready-made instant coffee,
Yeah.
they're bringing in the raw beans
Yeah.
and then processing them themselves.
Yeah, the green beans.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're importing those from countries like Brazil and Colombia,
Oh.
known for their, high-quality Arabica beans,
Okay.
roasting them locally, catering to the Chinese market.
So it's they want the best beans and they want to control the roasting process
Yeah.
to make sure that they're getting the exact coffee that they want.
Exactly.
That's really
It's a
cool.
big shift. It is. From that soluble to the green coffee imports.
Yeah.
I mean, it really shows how much China cares about quality coffee now.
So this is probably really good news for coffee producers around the world,
I think so, yeah.
especially those that are focused on high quality and sustainability.
Exactly.
Because, if you're a producer in, say, Brazil,
Yeah.
and you see this huge market emerging,
Right.
that's demanding these high quality beans.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be really encouraging.
Yeah, for sure.
So this isn't just a China story, it's a global coffee story.
Yeah,
Because that demand is going to have ripple effects across the entire industry.
absolutely.
I think that raises some interesting questions, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Will China's focus on quality and sustainability actually push the entire industry in a more positive direction?
It's possible.
I mean, it kind of feels like they're throwing down the gauntlet,
Yeah.
challenging the rest of the coffee world to step up their game.
Yeah, you got to keep up.
Do you think they'll rise to the occasion?
We'll have to see, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, one thing is for sure. We are seeing,
Yeah.
a seismic shift in the world of coffee.
And China is at the center of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've been talking a lot about China as a consumer,
Yeah.
but they're also starting to produce their own coffee.
Right.
So what does that mean?
Well, I mean, China definitely wants to be a major player in coffee production.
Okay.
But there are some challenges, of course.
Yeah, like what?
Well, they need to figure out how to scale up their production
Okay.
to meet that huge domestic demand.
Right.
And, they need to be able to produce really high-quality beans
Okay.
consistently
Okay.
to compete on that global market.
So it's kind of a balancing act between
Mhm.
quantity
Right.
and quality,
It's-
which is a challenge for any producer.
Yeah, for sure.
But especially when you're trying to like
Yeah.
enter a market that's already so established.
Yeah, yeah. Tough. But, I mean, China's really good at adapting
Yeah.
to different markets
Yeah.
and developing quickly.
So
Right.
maybe we shouldn't underestimate them.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
It's going to be interesting to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and on top of that,
Yeah.
we have to remember that the Chinese consumer
Right.
is really what's driving this
Yeah.
whole coffee revolution.
Totally.
And it's really interesting to see how they're
Yeah.
shaping the coffee experience
Yep.
to fit their own unique preferences.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really curious about this.
Yeah.
We talked about domestic chains
Yeah.
and how they're
Yeah.
tapping into technology
Yeah.
and incorporating these
Yeah.
local flavors.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like?
Oh, it's pretty wild.
Okay, tell me more.
I'll give you some examples.
Okay, so you're about to give me some examples.
Yeah, so imagine this. You walk into a coffee shop
Okay.
and your phone,
Yeah.
it pops up
Okay.
and recommends a drink
Based
on
on
your past orders and
Is
preferences.
that a real thing?
It is, yeah. Some chains are using AI
Oh, wow.
to personalize your coffee experience.
That's wild. It's like
Yeah.
my phone knows my taste buds better than I do.
Right.
That's pretty crazy.
It should be cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, but, it's not just about the tech.
Right, because you were talking about
Yeah.
local ingredients and things.
Yeah, the flavors.
Okay.
They're getting really creative with that, too.
What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Okay, have you ever heard of cheese foam?
Cheese foam?
Yeah.
No, what is that?
So it's this topping.
Okay.
I mean, from whipped cream cheese,
Okay.
milk and sugar.
That's like a sweet topping.
Yeah, sweet and savory.
Okay.
And it's become super popular in China.
Cheese foam on coffee. That's pretty wild.
I know, right?
I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical,
I get it.
but I'd be willing to try it.
It's good.
What's it taste like?
It's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
creamy,
Okay.
a little bit tangy.
Okay.
It's on top of your coffee.
So it's almost like a dessert topping.
It's kind of like having a cheese Danish in your coffee.
Okay, so it's not just about taking these, Western coffee trends.
Yeah, totally.
And just copying them?
Yeah, they're putting their own spin on it.
Okay, so what else are they doing?
Well, they're using a lot of local ingredients.
What?
Like goji berries,
Okay.
red bean paste,
Hip-hop.
ginseng.
So they're really
Yeah.
taking inspiration from
Yeah.
their own culinary traditions
Exactly.
and fusing that with
Yeah.
modern coffee trends.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it does sound really cool.
And they're also using different brewing methods,
Okay.
like borrowing techniques from traditional Chinese tea ceremonies.
So it's a fusion of tea and coffee culture.
Right, exactly.
It's amazing.
It's really interesting to see how it's all come together.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
Talking about everything from the rise of coffee consumption to the development of a very uniquely Chinese coffee culture.
Yeah.
If you had to sum it up,
Yeah.
what would be the one big takeaway for our listeners?
I think the main thing to remember is that China's coffee story is just beginning.
Oh, yeah.
They're embracing coffee,
Yeah.
but they're doing it their own way.
And they're not afraid to experiment,
No, they're definitely pushing boundaries.
which is really exciting
Yeah, I think the rest of the world is watching.
to see what they'll come up with next.
Exactly.
Yeah, and as their influence on the global coffee market continues to grow,
Right.
I mean, it's really anyone's guess what new trends and innovations will come out of it.
I'm excited to see what happens.
Me too. It's going to be a wild ride.
For sure.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Chinese coffee.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.